Hey everyone, welcome back to Sleepy Hollow. It's me, and this is the first ever episode of I Heart Sleepy Hollow, a series in which we explore every nook and cranny of this village and its history. So today we're talking about the Alchemist of Sleepy Hollow, a man whose real name we don't know, but who is spoken of in hushed tones by the townsfolk as Old Balthus. Some say his name was Balthazar, others say it was Valentine. But what we do know is that he lived here in the late 18th century, and he was a man obsessed with alchemy. Alchemy was a kind of precursor to modern chemistry, and it was practiced all over Europe in the Middle Ages and beyond. Alchemists were often seen as slightly mad scientists, and for good reason. They were obsessed with turning base metals like lead into gold, and they experimented with highly toxic and explosive substances in their quest to understand the fundamental building blocks of our universe, and they believed that if they could just discover the secret of how to transmute lead into gold, then they would also unlock the secret to immortality. And so it was that these men and women, both brilliant and unhinged, searched across the world for the one substance that could grant them eternal life. The legendary Philosopher's Stone. Legend has it that old Balthus had discovered the Philosopher's Stone here in Sleepy Hollow. But before we get into that, let us talk about how we even know about him in the first place. Because as with many things in Sleepy Hollow, there's a bit of a mystery there too. The main source for what we know about old Balthus comes to us from Washington Irving's The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, where we learn that he came across some old documents in the archives of a Dutch family while he was writing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And in those documents, he found an account of the village written by a traveler who visited in the 1790s, more than a century before Irving's own visit. And in that account, mention was made of old Balthus and his legendary Philosopher's Stone. There's just one small problem with that. As far as we can tell, Washington Irving made the whole traveler story up. There is no mention of this alleged document or of old Balthus in any of the published versions of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, nor is there any evidence that such an archive existed at all. And yet the story of old Balthus stuck with the townspeople of Sleepy Hollow and became part of their local lore. So where did they get it from? Well, that's where things get a little murky. Some say that old Balthus was based on an actual alchemist who lived in a house on the north side of town, where a sign was hung out front reading, "Beware of the dragon," and according to legend, a dragon sculpture was placed above the door, which some say may have been a gargoyle. We do know that in 1798, a petition was signed by several prominent members of the community, asking the village council to allow them to build a brick wall around their neighborhood, which was becoming increasingly dilapidated. And when the council denied their request, these men banded together and built the wall anyway. But when the council threatened to have them arrested for their insolence, they agreed to tear it down, and so it was that the North Castle was born. But despite the fact that Washington Irving almost certainly invented the story of old Balthus and the Philosopher's Stone, that hasn't stopped the people of Sleepy Hollow from embracing him as their own every year. The village hosts a Founders Day parade in his honor, and his image is emblazoned on everything from t-shirts to mugs to license plates. And perhaps that's the real legacy of this legendary alchemist. Not so much the search for the Philosopher's Stone, but the spark of inspiration that he continues to ignite in the hearts and minds of the people of Sleepy Hollow to this very day. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this inaugural episode of I Heart Sleepy Hollow, then please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to follow us on social media for all the behind-the-scenes fun stuff. Until next time, stay spooky.